Hey, I'm Dallas, one of the pastors at Doxology Bible Church. One thing about Doxology is we are one church with 3 unique locations. Today you're going to hear from one of our guest speakers, Chris Freeland. He is our senior pastor. He's going to be speaking as we continue in our series called Dear Future Church. Today we'll be in Revelation, where we'll talk about a letter to the Church of Philadelphia, and what we're really going to focus in on is opportunity. And I want you to grab some paper, grab a pen, take some notes as you hear Chris bring a word from the book of Revelation.
We have to stay clear, hold fast to the most important message, the best good news we've been given. So it's worth re-asking the question for us. We're living into our purpose to be good news people, the places we're positioned. Or if we believe the lie that the door of opportunity for sharing the news has been locked, at least for misfit toys like us, that we don't have enough, that we'll never be enough. When it comes to life with Jesus, it comes to the life that he's called you to and designed you for, showing and telling who he is and what he's like wherever you're sent, from your neighborhood to the nations. People are generally more open to hearing good news than we are to sharing it. Amen. Hey, if you got a Bible, meet me in Revelation chapter 3 today. Revelation chapter 3. If you're just joining us, this is part 6 of a series we've called Dear Future Church, where we are reading the mail of some ancient, historical, real churches that all received letters from Jesus, but with the knowledge that the letter that was intended directly for them would be read by all of the people through whose hands it passed along the way. Sort of like if you ever remember sending notes in school, you'd pass a note to somebody else, and when you passed the note, you knew full well that when you passed that note, that was going to get read by every single person who handled the note on the way to its intended recipient. Even if you folded up like a triangle and said "for Beth's eyes only," it was going to get read by everybody, hypothetically. No, it's fine. I'm good. I'm fine. That's the way these letters were intended by Jesus. But not just for the ancient churches that would read it as it passed through all of their hands. They were intended to be read by them, but also sent forward so that all of the ancient churches and then current churches and future churches could see what Jesus looks at, what he looks for, what he wants to see when he looks at a church. So today we're to letter number 6, which is a letter that's written to the church at Philadelphia, the first Philadelphia. I worked all week on a good pastor dad joke about Philadelphia, mainly about the food, but they were all really cheesy. That went better than I thought. Actually, Philadelphia is the exact opposite, the ancient Philadelphia, the exact opposite of whatever you think of when you think about current Philadelphia. Don't think big city. Don't think tourist attraction, historical sites. That's what the people who put Philadelphia there on the ancient map thought that it would become, but the thought and the plans had never materialized. If you want a picture of ancient Philadelphia, think more rundown, beat down, ghost town mixed with Napa or Sonoma Valley, okay? The soil there was rich, it was fertile, soft rolling hills, perfect for wineries and vineyards and a few other crops that could grow in rich volcanic soil. The city itself was kind of a bust that had never lived up to its original vision. The people that had founded the city had put it on the far eastern part of the Greco-Roman Empire. It was designed to be, their word, not my word, a euangelion city. It was designed to be an evangelism city, so that anyone who walked into the city from the Eastern world, from Asia Minor, would immediately see and hear good news of the Greek emperor and his empire. It was a place where anybody leaving the Greco-Roman Empire, before they went to any other place in the world, would get a reminder of how great, how wonderful the emperor and his empire was there in the Greco-Roman world. So that wherever they were sent, so that wherever they went, the goodness of the empire and the goodness of the emperor couldn't be missed from Philadelphia. It's what the city of Philadelphia, it's what the people of Philadelphia were always designed to be. But what was designed to be was broken, literally. So all of the things that made Philadelphia of the ancient world a great place for wineries and vineyard, that volcanic soil, also meant that the city was susceptible to earthquakes. And 3 different times, they built this great gateway city, and an earthquake had caused it to crumble. By the time Jesus wrote this letter, the hopes for the city had all but been abandoned. The people that lived there had resolved that their city and that their lives would never, ever live up to their purpose. That they and it would never amount to much more than broken, forgotten ruins. Now, broken down Napa is one picture of the people in this city. The other one I can't stop thinking about this week is the people of an island from a show when I was a kid. An island that was a home of a spotted elephant, a train with square wheels, a bird that swims, a boat that can't float, and a kite that's afraid of heights. Any of you remember the island? Discovered by Hermie, Yukon Cornelius, and Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. They accidentally land on, do you remember the name of the island? The island of misfit toys. It's this place that's filled with toys that believe that some flaw, some quirk, some broken place about them or within them means that they will never fulfill their purpose. Can you relate to that? If you can relate at all to the island of misfit toys, if you feel like a purpose from Jesus is something that's lost on you, like you're somehow too quirky, too flawed, too broken to be useful, you've got something in common with the people of ancient Philadelphia. They would have felt like that too. And in this letter to them, gosh, has Jesus got good news for you? Look at the letter, Revelation chapter 3, beginning in verse 7. Jesus writes, to the angel in the church in Philadelphia, write, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut. What he shuts, no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I've placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know you have little strength, which can either mean I know you don't amount to much, I know you don't have what it takes, or I know that your strength has been tapped by the circumstances around you. He says, I know you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, although they're not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Since you've kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that's going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I'm coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. The one who's victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God, and I will also write on them my new name. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the church filled with flawed, broken, quirky, misfit people who wonder if they'll ever amount to much or have what it takes to be who they were made to be, who just so happen to have found themselves placed in a city positioned to be a gateway for good news to the world, but assuming that the dream has gone bust, Jesus points to four things. He points to a key, a door, a pillar, and a promise. A key, a door, a pillar, and a promise. First, the key. You see it in verse 7? He says, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut. What he shuts, no one can open. This is one of those verses that if it had been written in the years of the online era, it wouldn't be black or red like it shows up in your Bible. It would show up as blue. Be a click through, like a hyperlink. And if you clicked on it, it would take you to another passage in the Jewish scriptures, Isaiah chapter 22. Isaiah chapter 22 talks about Jerusalem, another city that had and still has a place in God's eternal purpose and promises. Even today, we're praying for the peace of Jerusalem, aren't we? I hope you are. Even though it seems constantly surrounded by its enemies and not always on the best behavior internally. Isaiah chapter 22 is a story of both of those things. It's a city that's surrounded by its enemies, in danger of being destroyed before its purpose is fulfilled. But rather than grieving about what's happening externally, the people internally throw a big Mardi Gras kind of party to go out in style. Sure, they're going to be destroyed. God tells them the consequences are going to be severe, but that he's still going to be faithful to his promise and his purpose for them. That someday, someone who holds the key will show up. The one who holds the key of the kingdom. Not the Greco-Roman Empire. The kingdom that God promised would bring peace and healing to the nations. That's in Isaiah 22. It's also the exact same words that he writes to this defeated city of Philadelphia. The one writing the letter says he holds the key, and he's coming soon. The two things a key represents, you know this, a key represents access, and it represents authority. You use a key to give you access to some place that everybody doesn't have access to. And the fact that you have a key indicates that you've got some kind of authority to be there, to go into the places that the key unlocks. So I've got a key here that allows me to get in the doors of Doxology. Whenever I want to come in, the outside doors stay locked most of the time. So if you drive by at night, you see my truck and you see a light on in my office, you don't worry about it. You just assume, well, he's got authority to be there. He's authority to have access there, or he's used his authority to give somebody else access to be there. They've got a key. They've got authority, they've got access to be in the place that they're going, or they're there with someone who does what a key represents. So keep with that image and what you know about the city already. This is a city who was designed to be a gateway, but for whom everybody had assumed that the city had been permanently closed for business. That it never would have enough for long enough to be good news people when it came to the greatness of the Roman Empire. You notice Jesus says, I'll do you guys better than that. I'll provide access and authority for you to come in and go out with good news of an even greater kingdom than the greatest kingdom that the world has ever seen. From this place that you are, however it looks, you're in perfect position with a key, access, and authority to proclaim the good news of the kingdom of heaven wherever you go. That's even better than what the city was positioned there with a purpose to do at the beginning, isn't it? Kingdom of heaven versus the Greco-Roman Empire and its emperor. It's worth noting, isn't it, for those of us who most of us believe is a greater kingdom than even the Roman Empire was. It's always been a temptation for followers of Jesus who live in a kingdom that is great in so many ways to get our kingdom messages twisted, get our messages confused, where we can't differentiate between the kingdom of the world and the far greater kingdom of heaven, of which we're ambassadors, where the people that we're sent to can't differentiate or distinguish between the messages that we say and we show. Especially during times like theirs, times like ours, we have to stay clear, hold fast to the most important message, the best good news we've been given. So it's worth re-asking the question for us. If we're living into our purpose to be good news people, the places we're positioned. Or if we believe the lie that the door of opportunity for sharing the news has been locked, at least for misfit toys like us. That we don't have enough, that we'll never be enough. Are we remembering? Are we living as if the one who has the master key, access, and authority wherever he sends us has already gone before us? The door may be more unlocked than you think, or than the enemy tells you that it is. I had that experience this week. I had a conversation with a guy this week. I asked a faith question, and a door to good news that had been locked for 9 years suddenly popped open. And you know what I thought, honestly, in that moment? That door pops open, and there's an opportunity to talk about good news that had not been there for 9 years. You know what I thought? I thought in that moment, do not walk through that door, Chris Freeland. That's not a door for you. This is an opportunity. This is a moment that hasn't been there for 9 years. If you walk through this door, you're going to screw it up. You're going to mess it up. You're a kite that's afraid of heights, my man. Do not walk through that door. It's this two-got opportunity. Turn around. You're going to screw it up. Whose voice is that? That's not the voice of Jesus. And listen, it is not the voice of Jesus when you hear it either. Jesus says, I got the key. Follow me. I'm coming too. And by the way, a kite that's afraid of heights is perfect for this particular moment. Why do you think I put you there? When it comes to life with Jesus, it comes to the life that he's called you to and designed you for, showing and telling who he is and what he's like wherever you're sent, from your neighborhood to the nations. People are generally more open to hearing good news than we are to sharing it. The door's almost always more unlocked than we think. So I wonder, how long has it been since you tried the door for a conversation about good news rather than just assuming it would be locked in front of you? I had that experience this week at a restaurant too. I showed up early. Just assumed that it was closed, that it was locked. I sat in my truck and I waited a good 10 minutes. Guy pulls up beside me, looks over at me, sits in his truck for another 5 minutes. Guy pulls up on the other side of me. He sits in his truck. Then a guy pulls up on the other side of him, walks out of his car, walks right up to the restaurant, opened the door and walked in. The other 3 of us, we see what happened. We walk into the restaurant. We just follow him through the unlocked door and avoid eye contact with each other for the whole time that we're there. I wonder how many places in your life God has wanted to use you to show and to tell good news to somebody that he's placed you near, that you just assumed the door was locked. Maybe the one with the key arrived before you, and the person that you're near is simply waiting on someone to walk through the door that Jesus has already opened in front of you. And that's actually what he says to Philadelphia, isn't it? Verse 8. See, I have placed you before, or I've placed before you an open door that no one can shut. So they thought about closed doors the same way we think about closed doors. This was a people that lived in a city that was literally designed to be a gateway. A combination of circumstances, from earthquakes to persecution, to a life of good deeds that had totally sapped their strength, made it seem like they were standing in front of a permanently closed door. You notice what Jesus says here? They're standing in front of a closed door, but you notice Jesus doesn't say, hey, look over there, I opened a window. He says, look in front of you. A wide open door. So the picture isn't of God slamming a door in somebody's face and then trying to make them squeeze through a window on the other side. It's a picture of a person standing in front of double doors, saying, I don't want to go through the door that's wide open. I want to go through this closed one right here. Okay, here's the picture. We tend to want in on God's provision and God's purpose and all of God's promises. We just don't want to walk through God's path to get it. And I wonder if that's you today. If there's some area in your life that you are avoiding handing over to Him. Some area in your life that you know where the open door is, but you're going to stand in front of the closed door and wait till He opens it instead. Because even though you know His path always leads to blessing in the end, you only ever want the blessings on your own terms. Notice in this letter, it's not a rebuke for this city. It's an invitation for them. Jesus says, look, you thought your life and your purpose was over because of your circumstances. What I'm telling you is your exact circumstances, your exact history, your exact struggles and flaws and quirks may have resulted in a closed door right in front of you and also have resulted in an open door right there in front of you. Jesus says, I've opened a door. I've given you an opportunity. I wonder how often in my life I've been asking God to open a door that He's closed rather than walking through the doors that He's already opened. How often I assume that I'm too quirky, I'm too broken, I'm too flawed, I'm too misfit for His purpose. When what I see as a flaw is something He can use as a feature if I'll trust Him enough to walk through the doors that He's opened. Remember Acts 2, the moment that the church begins? This is exactly what happens for the followers of Jesus in that moment, isn't it? They're uneducated, redneck, backwoods Galilee people who have been cowering behind literal locked doors for fear of the Romans. When they find the door literally blown open, they walk through the door and God gives them the power to speak in the language of the crowd with an authentic accent and dialect. And that's the message of the crowd. Like, wait, aren't these uneducated rednecks from Galilee? These are idiot Galileans. They're speaking in our language with our exact dialect, perfect diction. Like, if they'd been qualified, they wouldn't have been the right people for God to use in that moment. But they never would have experienced it on the locked side of the open door. And you won't either. Back to Philadelphia. A key that opens a door and then leads to a pillar. A key, a door, a pillar. Look at verse 12. To the one who's victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. A key, a door, and a pillar. What's the one thing that's left standing after an earthquake? It's the pillars. The rest of the city comes crashing down, but the pillars that were built for stability often stay standing. And they're in the Greco-Roman world, and you may have seen this if you've ever visited the ruins there. Because of that, the pillars were the places where the names and the stories of the heroes were hung. It was thought to immortalize their work, since the pillars would never come down. Jesus says, you might not amount to much. Exiled on the island of misfit toys that shakes, the foundations crumble from time to time, but I will make you a pillar in the temple of my God. Think of that image. Jesus says, nobody else may know your deeds. Nobody else may hear your story. Nobody else may ever come to know your name, but I know it. And I'll show it permanently in proximity to God Himself forever. That will be your destiny for all eternity. Jesus says, I'll make you a pillar points to stability, proximity to God and the temple of my God, and destiny forever and ever and ever. Still standing when the earth shakes. You're the presence of the God who has sent you with a story that's told forever about even better news than the empire or the emperor. The good news about a God who sees you, who saves you, and who loves you. That's the promise. Key, door, pillar, and promise. Look at verse 10. He says, "See, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth." There's some discussion about exactly what trial he's talking about here. Great tribulation, eternal judgment, some kind of local trial that was coming at that time. I tend to lean just personally towards great tribulation. I'll spare you the seminary class for all of that. At the end of the day, the specific interpretation doesn't change the application at all. In Christ, what he's saying, you never have to fear any worst case scenario you can think of, because the one with authority sees you, he knows you, and he will always be mighty to save you. There's another half to the promise, though. He sees you, he knows you, and he loves you. This is such an incredible promise to these people that have been discarded and forgotten, persecuted on the island of misfit toys, right? We talk about the synagogue of Satan earlier in another letter, people that claim to speak for you but don't clearly have the same bedrock beliefs as you, but who speak with the voice of the enemy to discredit you and your message when you're living into your purpose. Notice what Jesus says to encourage the Philadelphian Christians in verse 9. He says, "I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews but they're not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you." What a promise for people that feel like they're not made for much. Told that they're not going to amount to anything. People who have begun to believe that the opportunity for them to serve a purpose for God has been closed for people like them because they listen to the voice of the enemy. What a promise to hear that at the end of the story is going to be told. And the story that will be told is of the rejectors and the bullies and the detractors and the enemies falling down to declare, wow, Jesus really did love them. That's a promise. Doxology is not just a promise for a person in Philadelphia 2,000 years ago. It's a promise to you. Through them, and not just through this letter, through how they responded to the letter, the promise has come to you. In fact, the church in Philadelphia, we know from history, actually endured longer than any of the other 7 churches that received letters. We know their history. It continued in that place for another 1,300 years. And it's got a reputation from history. The church of Philadelphia was a sending church. The church in Philadelphia became a gateway for good news to the world. They planted hundreds of churches from that place towards the east, one at least as far as India. And when the city was finally conquered in 1342, the story is told of the Philadelphian believers who were gathered together, who proclaimed good news, who were offered better news, that they could escape certain death by rejecting the good news they proclaimed. And one by one, they refused. One by one, they died. And it totally confounded their conquerors, who had never seen bravery, never seen courage, like these rural Philadelphian nobodies, who believed that their news was better, even in the face of death. And their conquerors were forced to proclaim, their Jesus really loves misfit toys. And he does. Little trivia about the Island of Misfit Toys. A television special that they appeared on first debuted on December the 6th, 1964. And the toys only had one tiny little small scene in the episode. Described who they were, but it never really resolved what would happen to them or what had happened to them. Viewers identified so much with those misfit toys, that teeny tiny small scene. They were so invested in what happened to those toys that the producers completely changed the ending. They got overwhelmed with mail from people saying, we have to know what happened to the island of misfit toys. They changed the ending. If you've ever seen the old claymation Rudolph movie, now it ends with Rudolph's promise being kept to all of the misfit toys who find and live into their purpose despite their flaws and their quirks and their brokenness. In the letter to Church of Philadelphia, Jesus says, in Christ, that's how your story will end too. Not only does Jesus love flawed, quirky, broken people, we are the only kind of person that he came for. To show us how to live, to die for how we missed, and to offer us his presence and his power and his access and his authority to proclaim who he is to the world. You're it. Perfectly designed, perfectly positioned for the purpose that he has designed you for, wherever he's sending you from here. Flaws, quirks, circumstances, brokenness, with access and authority and opportunity and the best news story you are perfectly suited to carry, with a promise that you can take from here, wherever you're going, for now. Would you bow your head with me? Maybe that you came into this moment needing good news that you'd never heard. I totally believe that's why God placed me here today. And I think it's why he placed you here too. That you could hear that there is a God in heaven who loves you to the point that he pursued you, not to condemn you, but to offer his life as a sacrifice for you. To pay the penalty that you owed God, and to rise from the dead to give you life from God forever and a good news story to carry from here. And he offers it to you as a gift. It costs you nothing. It simply has to be received. And you can receive it in this moment. It's as simple as telling him right where you sit in the privacy of your heart, Lord, I need that gift. I need life from you because I will not earn it on my own. Lord, for the person who's receiving that life because of the death and the resurrection of Jesus, for those of us who have received that life and get to carry it, Lord, would you make us people who live through our life as if we've got access and authority and opportunity and a promise to carry the best news of humanity ever. The news of a God who loves us, who forgives us, and who promises us eternity. Would you let us be carriers of that into the world where we go, even as broken, misfit toys that were placed in a place on purpose and with a purpose wherever we go. Would you let us be good news people on location in a bad news world? We ask it in Jesus' name for his sake. Amen.
Hey, thanks for watching. If something you heard resonated with you today, we would love to connect with you. Visit doxology.church/connect or leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed today's message and you want to see more, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new videos.